I have a theory, and I genuinely feel like I'm right. Fenrico is possessed by the Threnodian and has been this entire time, meaning Fenrico is like Mia. And don't worry, I think I have some connections that could very well, in my opinion, be proof of this. I don't think we could have fully made the connection until at earliest 2.4 story quest and at the latest the recent 2.5 stream. Let me lay out the case because I got some spicy connections. Perhaps they will be worthy of a like and sub?
I was acting. Or was I?
Primus Fenrico has claimed that he was the one who came back from that fateful day of the Dark Tide and was imbued with Sentinel's blessing. This was after Fleur-de-Lis martyred herself. We all know this was false because Imperator was no longer here, but through Fenrico saying this, people assumed he was just straight up lying, which in a way he potentially was. People may have concluded he was lying because of the end of Ciaccona story quest, where Christoforo questions when the last time Fenrico dreamed of the divinity, in which Fenrico couldn't respond. It leads you to believe upon first pass that he was lying when he claimed that he came back blessed and now speaking for the divinity, doesn't it? Many, including myself, looked at that as just a power grab move. Well, I think it's true Threnodian has been quiet since 2.0, but after the events of the inverted tower in 2.2, that kicked off important things. Namely, the awakening of Mia and the recovery of her body by the Fractidus and Septimont. I think a similar thing happened with Fenrico, but we just never saw that on screen, and we may get details about it once 2.5 drops. That's not all though, there are other parallels that can be lined up. Remember this conversation? Christoforo makes a point to tell Fhrolova what the Threnodian sought to do, and that even if there was a failure to corrupt the central hub, the Threnodian would control Mia and use her as a skin puppet to get higher access within the city. Look at Fenrico. You cannot tell me that this is not a potential case of the Threnodian's backup plan. I believe Fenrico is the successful attempt of that idea. 2.2 reawakened Threnodian essence in Fenrico, just like how it happened to Mia. But I think for Fenrico it has probably always been there since he came back 20 years ago after Fleur-de-Lis's martyrdom. So I think it's totally reasonable to think that Fenrico is a successful reflection in which the Threnodian succeeded in corrupting a person to then being the head of the city. After all of Ragusa has been under a specific creed made into law as a result of his rule. I think that when he literally told us at the end of 2.0 that his embodiment of the Sentinel requires a mortal representative, he literally told us that he is a Threnodian, total hiding in plain sight kind of thing. I don't think a lot of us really added the weight to his words until more recent stories unfurled, because until this point we operated off of different assumptions. Not only that, but keep in mind too, we have a lore book which talks about Fenrico's behavior more in depth from his past as a student and while in power. It's this book, Former Privy Councillor's Notes. Here he talks about the Order from the perspective of another person within the Order. He knew Fenrico from the past as they were classmates when they were in school back in the seminary. It outlines the strict and increasingly unethical enforcement of faith, and revolves more specifically around the declining humane way they send people off to die for transgressing. In the first note, this counselor notices that Fenrico has changed through his description of being shrouded in a strange shadow. With more context on how the Dark Tide works, I definitely believe that this was a literal expression of the Threnodian having possession over Fenrico, which the counselors may not be privy to fully understanding at that time. When looking at the second note too, you get the impression that Fenrico's dream that he had for Renacida back when he was still in the seminary may have been different than the one he enacts when finally in power. If we are to take the fact that the Fractidus has been dipping their mittens in the affairs of others to help their aims, and we have seen what Christoforo will do, it's not unlikely that first off, their partnership has been going on for a long while, and that secondly, he could have willingly been a subject of their experiments if it meant enforcing the ideas of unity upon Renacida. This would very much echo back to us when looking at Fhrolova and Christoforo's conversation about how he was able to bargain with Threnodian Mia. If we take that knowledge and apply it to the theory here, Fenrico as a possessed Threnodian being could have done the same playbook but more directly, as he was already someone who was well known or even in power at the time of bargain. That may also be why we have the Fabricatorium infested with the Fraxidus, because Fenrico allowed mutual exchange of facilities to carry out experiments. There's two more connecting points I want to get through: Tears That No Longer Fall and Fenrico's split. I'll start with the shorter one first. Tears That No Longer Fall. This line that is said by Fenrico is interesting because it's something we have heard before. We've heard it in Cartathia's Resonator Showcase. During this time, we're hearing the Threnodians speak these things, and again repeated by Fenrico, because by this point the spiritual corruption that has been inside Fenrico has ultimately consumed him. In fact, Cantarella has even pointed out how this spiritual corruption works. First, this spirit goes, then the mind follows, and you're only a puppet at that point. Fenrico's soul, I think, is very well lost at this point, and you can see that in my next point, Fenrico's split. Wuthering Waves 2.2 brought Rover the power to split and merge frequencies as a result of absorbing the frequencies in the inverted tower, and as a result of Cartathia's death. We're reminded that again in 2.4 when Lupa enters the central hub and it's revealed that it's the Threnodian. Rover's eye glows with that ability and pushes back the merged Threnodian Mia and Lupa, separating the frequencies. Since all of that has been set up and focused on, relook at this clip. You see Fenrico for a moment spazzing out like a psychedelic 2000s music video, and there you see two of him. I think this scene is the biggest supporting beam for my take that Fenrico has been just a puppet for the Threnodian, and has been this way for a long while. It is literally shown to us. I think too there are big ties linking us back to specifically Christoforo. As we know, he looks to be the one who manages getting into the inner workings of broader political or societal systems, like working with powerful families in the Silvas of Septimont, or being in proximity of the head of the state in Ragusa. With that in mind too, I don't doubt that Christoforo knew of Fenrico's possession by Threnodian and has been, much like Mia, trying to amplify it so that it can lead to the eventual swallowing of Rinascita. And to drive it home further on this split, look at the upper left-hand corner of the official 2.5 art. You'll notice a dude there smiling, with maybe some messy white hair Dante style. Now, if all of this looks to be true, I would put forth that this may be the Threnodian Fenrico. It matches up too positionally, where Fenrico occupies the lower right and the upper left can be connected as the hidden version we've always brushed past. There's more in regards to the gem at the end of 2.4, but we don't know quite enough yet. If I were to guess though, the gem is the linking tool that will allow Fhrolova to guide both her and Rover to the Fabricatorium. The last bit of the script points out that it has deep purple hues, which is at this point relatively synonymous with Threnodian Dark Tide, as well as the silhouettes of fish. The silhouettes now can be assumed to be the frequencies which have come from the Fabricatorium. I wonder too if this is why Mia looked as if she was still alive after ending her life. If they were for a time in the Fabricatorium due to them dying, then that could be a result of their frequencies being recycled and renewed. This would allow her body to continue being as is due to the Threnodian recycling itself through her as a vessel, keeping Mia's and the Threnodian's body frequencies as if they were never decaying. My guess too is that this gem holds importance to Fhrolova too, because she can also create echoes. However, I think the way in which the Fabricatorium is doing it is now interfering with her abilities to reach into the decayed frequencies stored in the Lost Beyond. That's probably why we never see her summon TDs in the 2.0 story and has to relegate to corrupting or summoning her specific kind of TDs made from Hecate. I feel like the connections are very, very strong. I feel like I might be right, or at least pretty close. Either way, this upcoming story beat will have loads of interesting stuff, and I'm glad 2.5 is keeping the momentum that 2.4 landed. I think this story beat in particular will play a very important role for when the eventual final tide of Ragusa's prophecy and the high tide of Septimon's hunting ground comes around. I believe that it will be solely conducted by the Fractsidus, and removing Fenrico will make way for their theater kid artistic antics.
You're artistic.
Oh, I am misunderstood. Oh no.
What do you think though? Am I sounding crazy? Also, are you planning on getting Phrolova and Hecate? In any case, thank you for letting me take your time, like and sub, and be safe out there.
The dark tide connects everything.